Alright guys, welcome to RC Mojo. This week we're going to get the SCX10 chassis up on its wheels with bags G, H and I. Well, there's no point installing, so here's what we've got in bag G. We've got a Velcro strap, the screws bag, two battery mounts, the servo saver bits for the dig and shift servo, and the radio box. So here we go then, a G1. We'll need the strap, 10 M3x8 countersunk screws, the battery mounts, the 4 end bits, 2 big ones and 2 small ones, and the little adapter widget that goes between one of the mounts and the chassis. The top section of the page puts together the small battery mount. They're really simple assemblies where we attach the 2 end bits with 4 screws. The holes are slotted so you can adjust the length to suit your batteries. The adapter part then gets offered up to the bottom and has 2 screws in from the top. Quite a neat assembly. It would be quite handy to have for other trucks too. Quite easy to retrofit. But I'd bet the spares from Axial to make one up would be way too expensive. The small mount is perfect for the typical 2200 mAh 3S LiPo pack. Ideal as I use them in quite a few models, flying and ground based. Great when you want extra speed at the cost of runtime. The Velcro strap gets fed through a hole in the side under the mount, then goes through the loop and back on itself. It'll be really easy to deal with out in the cold weather with cold, wet hands. There's nothing fiddly and there's nothing to get lost. The second mount goes together exactly the same, except without the little adapter. This one has the large end bits so we can fit a large 2S pack. Your typical 5Ah hard case is a perfect fit. But some other large 2S packs are a bit too long. There's not quite enough adjustment, but that's okay, these yellow packs are a bit of an odd size. My only complaint is they only give you one strap. We're going to have both the mounts fitted to the chassis, so it would have been nice to have both straps for quick, easy swaps. Although another generic strap isn't really going to break the bank. Okay, G2, fitting the mounts to the chassis. This time we need 4 more M3x8 countersunk screws, the mounts, and the chassis. Okay, it's a quick one this. The large mount attaches to the funky rear chassis brace with 2 screws. Now I found the alignment of the holes wasn't quite perfect. I had to pop a hex driver in the hole and give it a bit of a tweak before I could get the screws started. This is the only bit of the whole kit that hasn't lined up nicely. Quite a minor thing though in the grand scheme of things. The small mount fits to the top of the left tray with 2 screws from the bottom into the adapter. Now if you're only wanting to run a small pack, you can always fit the small mount to the rear instead of the big one. For me though, I like the idea of having the spot for the large capacity packs near the back for long run times and a more even balance, then swap to the small 3S pack for more oomph and a bit more of a forward balance. G3, the shift and dig servos. For this one we need the 2 servo saver arms, the servo saver top bits, servo saver springs, 4 M2x6s and 2 M3x12 countersunk. Now unfortunately at the time of filming I haven't got the servos yet. Also unfortunately, as most of you will know, Axial only include the servo saver bosses with the specific Spectrum servo for these Axial trucks. Except that's not quite true. They also include them with their servo saver kit AX31009. It's still not ideal though, as it's really quite expensive when all you want is the boss. There's a Chinese kit that lets you use the Power HD TR4 servos, which will most likely last a bit longer than the Spectrum ones, at least based on forum chatter. I'd like to find out for myself though, so I'll most likely start with the Spectrum servos and see how they go. G4, the receiver box and ESC. Okay, we have a similar issue here. The receiver and the ESC haven't turned up while recording, so we'll end up with a WP1080 and a 6-channel FlySky receiver, assuming of course it actually fits. So while we can't fit the electronics, we can put the box together, so it's ready. We're going to need the 2 halves of the box, the silicon bung and gasket, 3 M2.5x12 countersunks, 3 M2.5x8 countersunk, and a small plastic bit. First then, the bung slides into the large slot in the base, and the small plastic bit fits in the middle hole. I'm guessing you're supposed to stretch it over your servo connectors so the wires are nicely sealed up. A little bit fiddly, but quite neat. We're going to be running at least 4 channels though, probably 5 once we add lights, so it's not going to work. I reckon when we install the receiver, we're just going to leave the bung out, and once the install is working, use a bit of silicone sealant. The gasket has a slot in the lid that it needs to fit into. We need to make sure it's nicely seated so we don't end up pinching it. Put together carefully, it's going to make a really nice waterproof box. For now, we'll fit the screws a few turns so we don't lose any. The long screws attach the lid and the short screws go into the bottom. When we get to it, the box is just going to screw to one of the trays on the chassis, but we're going to need to make sure the receiver actually fits first. Next step then, bag H. In here we have another cross brace, the engine cover and air filter, the pulley cover, the arch liners, and the bag of screws. Lots of nice parts, not many screws though, so should be quick to fit to the chassis. H1 then, the arch liners. We're going to need 2 M3x6s and 4 M3x8s, the chassis and the arch liners. For the rear liners, we just offer them up and threaded an M3x8 front and back. There's not a vast amount holding them on, but they're designed to keep the mud out, not hold the chassis together. For the front, we only get the one screw at this stage. Don't worry though, in the next step we add the cross member and it all gets tied together. H2, the engine cover. This time we have more tips from the RC crawler thread. We need to tap the holes for the cross member, which makes sense as the screws are going into the hard plastic of the damper mounts. For screws we need an M3x12, an M3x6 countersunk, an M3x12 countersunk, and 3 M3x14 countersunk, as well as the engine bits and the cross member. First then we'll attach the air filter to the engine. It just gets screwed to the front with the M3x12. When tightening it, set it up so it's fairly tight, but you can still move it. It'll make life easier later if we can move it out of the way to remove the pulley cover. Next, the cross member goes in using 2 of the M3x14s. These tie the top of the damper mounts and the arch liners to make the front end nice and solid. To the cross member, we attach the engine cover. We need to make sure the servo lead is routed somewhere safe. When we do the rest of the electronics install, it'll probably get moved, but essentially just make sure it can't get pinched or caught in something that spins. To attach the cover, we use the M3x6 and M3x10. Now this feels like another case of running out of space during the design. It would have been nice if both the screws were the same length, but the motor gets in the way. The last step is the pulley cover. We can lift the air filter out of the way, then attach the cover with the remaining M3x14. Now the engine cover kind of clips inside, so when the screw's most of the way in, make sure the 2 parts are properly lined up. What we end up with is a rather snazzy engine. It looks quite neat, but can be argued when the body's on you can't see it, and all it's going to do is cause the motor to heat up. Last bit for today, we're going to put the wheels together with bag I. Now this is a single step, so we need everything from the bag. We've got the tyres and wheels, of course, wheel nuts, 24 M3x10s, drive hexes, screw pins, spacers, and the nice little nut covers. These are of course beadlocks, so no glue, but we do have a little bit of a fight on our hands. The centre section of the wheel needs to be fed through the tyre so it's inside the tyre bead. Make sure it's even by massaging the tyre so the ring's sat right in the centre. Next we pop in the inner and the outer of the wheel, which is the easy bit done. Okay, so these wheels aren't too bad, some require some real effort. With these ones you can press down on the inside section to bring the parts together and start installing the screws. Now the first screw is the most difficult. We need to thread it in at least a turn or so, then very carefully fit the one on the opposite side. The trick is the wheel is going to be trying really hard to separate itself. Ideally you'd keep the wheel level and press down, but I found it'll put up with a bit of mistreatment. Once you've got the screws in a couple of turns so they're all nice and even, we can give the tyre another quick massage to make sure everything's nicely seated all the way round. Then we go from one side to the other, tightening each screw up a turn at a time. We want to pull the parts together as evenly as we can so the tyre fits straight on the wheel. When done, it should look like this. There's just 3 more to go. I think at some point we're going to swap the wheels out for some metal ones, probably black steel ones, since there's almost no silver on the rest of the truck. I think the black is going to look better. To fit the wheels, we slide the metal spacer onto the shaft, then a hex lining up the hole with the hole in the shaft. Pop in a screw pin and do it up. Now there's no point in using any thread lock here, as once the wheel goes on it's going to stop the pin from coming out anyway. Next the wheel goes on, followed by one of the wheel nuts. Tighten it up and we can apply the finishing touch, the nut cover. Now I do really like these, they really do finish the look. They just thread onto the exposed thread on the end of the shaft, nice and simple. The rest of the wheels are all the same of course, so with all 4 on we have a rolling chassis. Now I'm not going to change the camera angle yet though, I'll save the big reveal for when we've got the body ready to fit. Which won't be long now, as that's the next bag, bag J. It's a bit of a monster. It's the last bag and has the build up of the body and getting it fitted to the chassis. Alright, for this week though, that's going to be it. As always, thanks for watching, like if you liked, subscribe if you haven't, and leave a comment if there's something on your mind. Bye guys!